Happy Sunday, everybody. This beautiful summer day. It's like 155, maybe 156 degrees out here. Nice and balmy. So, anyway, I was just thinking about some things today. I was thinking about actually haircuts. You can see I got one recently. It's a little shorter than what I anticipated, but maybe by Christmas it'll be about where I want it to be. But it's just hair. It'll grow back. Things are very temporary. Everything here on Earth, is really temporary. So anyway, people ask me, sometimes like, Terry, where did that deep faith of yours come from? And where'd you get that crazy sense of humor? Well, actually, they came from the same person, my grandfather. I would like to introduce you to my grandparents today. We called them Nonnie and Papa. And this picture you're seeing is when my mom was actually in my grandmother's womb. My grandmother was pregnant with my mom at this point right here. So anyway, that picture gets my brain going in kind of a funky way. It's just something hard for me to wrap my brain around my mother, as an infant like that. But life changes, and for long, she was grown and I came along, but as I was growing up, I remember my grandparents, they were always just so welcoming. And my grandfather, he had the disease that I was cured of. He had rheumatoid arthritis, and he had one of the most severe cases that I've ever seen in my whole life. And I've seen a lot of really bad cases waiting in doctor's offices back when my rheumatoid arthritis was active. I was healed 11 and a half years ago. Jesus Christ healed me. And years before that, people were like, well, because you were raised Christian and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, really not. It was not that way. I had an introduction to it when I was a kid, but it wasn't really anything that I totally embraced as an adult. I had a lot of questions and investigated other ways, and then God just reached out to me, and He's like, hey, I really am the way, the truth, and the life like you've been taught. You need to trust me, and you need to stop looking in all these different directions. You're looking at all the possibilities. I need you to look at the impossible. I need you to look at me. And so that got my attention. So when I was a kid, my grandfather, I told you, he had this same condition, and it never stopped him from anything. He had a very grateful, humble way about him. He just embraced life, no matter what. He was under the persuasion that he fully believed in the power of Jesus Christ. He knew where his soul was going to go. He knew he wasn't going to be forever, and he had influence over his grandchildren, because when he was his happiest is when all of his grandchildren were around him. And I remember, as a young kid, we didn't have a place to swim. And he's like, well, I can take care of that. He went and had a company come out and dig a big hole, made a great big pond where we can go and swim. And when I was old enough to, I had reeds and everything, that diving board. We had a shed where all the watermelons he grew, we'd go and cut. And he's like, invite all your friends over. Let's eat up these watermelons. And so we did. We invited all our friends over. Like friends are like, for real? And like, yeah, for real. Come on over. They're like, my grandparents still do it. I mean, like, well, mine do. So they were like, cool. So they come over and we would eat watermelon. And I tell you, we never could eat the whole bunch. But that's the way my grandfather was. He was happiest when he was surrounded by his grandkids. And I think that he knew deep in his soul, the things that what he was going to teach us weren't really just through words. It was because of his actions. He had the choice. He knew that he was going to wake up in pain every day. He knew pain was going to be just a part of his earthly walk, and that's the way it was going to be. And this illness was not going to go anywhere. But he made the choice to embrace love and joy and peace and gentleness, all the fruits of the Spirit. He just let it manifest in him so beautifully. And everybody that knew him knew this about him. To this day, all these years later, I'm going to be 63 this month, he still remains one of the most joyful people I have ever known in my whole life. And I honestly really have no idea how he did that. But he did. I mean, he would not allow any walls to come up. He had the opportunity to do that. He had a lot of pain. He's like, well, I've had enough. I really don't want to be bothered anymore. I'm just going to hide behind my walls here and protect myself. He was like, no, you're never going to see me build walls, because behind walls is where bitterness grows. That's where all the dark energies come from. and he knew that his energy was light, and he knew that the energy inside of him was not going to exist here on earth forever. This goes away. Everything you see here goes away, but the energy inside of us, like we learned as kids, energy is never created, is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes, and so it's going to change into another form. And he knew that Jesus Christ had his soul. He had his back, he had his front, he had every part of him, and that's the way he lived his life, just solid. And anybody needed anything, they knew where to go. He had a garden. If anybody was hungry, we're going to go find you something to eat. And this is what I grew up witnessing as a child, these choices my grandparents made. And, it was just an amazing thing, as he became more and more crippled. He had all of his joints, major joints replaced, and some of them replaced twice because he just wore them out. He was not the kind to just sit and just fester in his own stuff here. He was like, no, there's a life being lived out here. I have grandkids, I have children, I have a whole big life. People need me. I'm going to get up and I'm going to move, I'm going to garden, and I'm just going to enjoy the life that I've been given, no matter what it looks like. And he just fully embraced that, and that made such a huge impression on me as a kid, and I watched my grandmother take care of him. My grandmother is one of the ones I got my green thumb from, and she taught us how to grow plants, not with any words, just by watching her. So remember, a lot of kids, instead of being taught, they catch a lot of things, instead of being taught, they catch so many important things that we do. It's not really the words we use all the time, even though they are important, the way they are spoken, but our actions speak louder than words. We've heard that phrase before, but that's, it was lived. That's the way I lived my life. And, I think about my grandparents and me as a grandparent now. I have my own grandchildren, and they're so precious to me. And, I learned at an early age how to fully love my grandchildren because of the way I had been loved as a child. And I just hope I told Nonnie and Papa often enough how much I loved them. I knew I couldn't get through this without crying. I love them so much, and I hope you have grandparents like that. I hope you have people in your life that have breathed so much goodness into you, and that you can pass it down to the next generation. They go with me to school, they go with me to church, they go with me to everybody I meet, because they are the instruments that just play so loudly in my soul. And I just, I'm so thankful to Jesus and all the opportunities that he's given us. And I just wanted to share that with you today. And I just hope that you really make good choices in the way we deal with each other. The fruits of the Spirit, we're kind to each other. We're full of joy, no matter our circumstances. So take that, and I hope you make good choices, and God bless you on this really warm day.